Today is National Take Your Pet to Work Day, but these days it seems like every day is Take Your Pet to Work Day because so many people are still working from home. But let's talk about that. Let's celebrate today. And let's also talk about some of the trends that we're seeing in the pet industry. And for that, we want to bring in Matt Bershadker. He's the president and CEO of the ASPCA. And of course, Yahoo Finance's Melody Hom joining the conversation as well. Matt, we know pet adoption certainly skyrocketed during the pandemic. I was taking a look at some of the numbers that you sent over. 23 million American households added a pet during COVID. So what are the trends today, and how does that compare to what we saw just 12 months ago?
Yeah, so that's true. 23 million households added a pet during the pandemic, and that's been consistent throughout the pandemic. And in fact, it's been either adoption or acquisition from a responsible breeder. There have been a lot of different ways that people have chosen to share their home with a pet and to enjoy the love and companionship that comes when you open up your home to a pet. And one of the very cool things about that stat is the vast majority of those 23 million folks, of those homes, they already had a pet in their home. So they understand the love, the joy, the companionship, and the responsibility that comes with sharing your home with a pet, excuse me. So we really believe that those animals are going to stay in those homes.
Matt, to that point, one of the common misconceptions and myths over the last couple of months is that those pets are boomeranging back to shelters. And a recent survey that you all did proves that that's not necessarily the case. Can you tell us where those rumors came from and sort of dispelling a lot of that we've heard in recent days?
Sure, and thank you for asking. There was a few media stories that kind of made a lot out of nothing, quite frankly. A handful of animals were being returned, which is totally normal. If it's not a good match, you should come to your local shelter. So we decided to field a study from last March of 2020 to May of 2021. We surveyed over 5,000 people. And what we found is that over 90% of the dogs that were acquired during that time remain in their homes, and over 85% of the cats that were acquired during that time remain in their homes. And even more importantly than that, when asked, nearly 90% of those folks have no thoughts of returning their pets when they go back to pre-pandemic routines.
You know, something that you mentioned earlier on was that specifically a lot of these folks who already have a pet are adopting a second one, right, during COVID. I personally know lots of friends who are desperately looking to adopt a dog, cat, lizard, anything, right, over the last year. And they were rejected time and time again, and the lotteries were kind of at capacity. So do you think it is fair for, second-time dog owners and cat owners to be given that chance? Shouldn't, a single 40-year-old who wants a pet be allowed to get one?
Yes, I do think they should be, but I want to respond to something you said because that's unfortunate. We in the animal welfare industry should be doing everything we can to remove barriers between homeless pets and people who want to give them loving homes. And I too actually have been rejected myself, and I've been at the ASPCA now for 20 years, president and CEO for 8. So we're working very hard as an organization, as a leader in this industry, to remove the barriers between homeless pets and people who love them.
I want to introduce Slevin here, a very special guest. She was just spayed a couple of days ago, and I'm gonna go all Bob Barker here. Definitely have your pet spayed or neutered, and maybe you can tell us all why that's important.
Well, what we know is that spay and neutering your dog or cat is the most effective tool that we have to control homelessness and overpopulation. We know that when there are too many pets, the city facilities, the municipal facilities become overrun, and then they have to make some very tough choices. And in fact, over the last 10 or 15 years, our industry has been enormously successful at providing access to free and low-cost spay-neuter to get the population down. So the key tool to ending the unnecessary euthanasia of dogs and cats in this country is sterilization, is making spay-neuter accessible and affordable to all. And in fact, the ASPCA is a leader in this effort. We have a facility in North Carolina where we train about 1,000 veterinarians each year on high quality, high volume spay-neuter techniques. That facility also helps self-sustaining nonprofit spay-neuter clinics get open and operate so they can provide accessible, affordable spay-neuter in those communities. There's about 175 of those clinics across the country at this point.
Matt, Remy and I have another question. Hello.
He's adorable. by the way.
He's a handful. In December 2020, the Department of Transportation did establish that emotional support animals do not count as service animals anymore. And that created a huge uproar, right? And most airlines, I think all airlines in the United States, no longer allow ESAs. Do you anticipate that changing going forward? I'm curious if you have an ear to legislation in DC.
I don't have an ear to it. It is something we'd like to see changed, and we'd like to see that broadened so people can really rely on their pets when they need them. I think what happened, unfortunately, is there was a few folks who abused the system, and that now is hurting all of us who rely on our pets, those of us who are certified emotional support animals or service dogs and service cats. But what we know is that the relationship between dogs and people is a very, very special relationship, and that people really do rely on that relationship to get through anxious times. So we'd like to see that broaden, and we'd like to see people be a little bit more generous in that space.
And of course, we're seeing a montage of a lot of Yahoo Finance puppos and cats. Speaking of anxiety, as we report back to offices, as people figure out hybrid models, I'm just thinking back to perhaps 6 years ago when a lot of tech companies, one of the added benefits was puppy care or having a puppy park nearby and having all of these incentives for dog owners. How do you anticipate that changing? Do you think there will be workplace benefits that really benefit, dog owners and pet owners here?
Absolutely. I think the way we work has been materially changed as a result of this pandemic. We at the ASPCA are trying to figure out what the future of work really looks like. And I think you will see employers try to do things to make their place of employment more attractive. And that includes making Bring Your Pet to Work Day a much more regular event, the way it has been over this past year, right? We've all had our animals with us a lot. So I do think you'll see that a lot more. And that employees report higher satisfaction levels when they're able to share their offices and share their workspaces with their pets.
Well, I was just kind of joking in our chat room here. I wanted to ask you, should it be illegal to dress up your pet for Halloween? But kind of seriously, that's kind of a thing that people do. Is it possible to cross the line there? Because I think I've seen some examples of where it's kind of crossing the line.
So I think it's an interesting question, right? Because there's a serious situation there. You want to make sure your pet is not put in a situation where he or she is suffering undue stress or is anxious. So I think it really comes down to the individual animal and how much can they tolerate. My 6-year-old Tova is constantly putting superhero capes on my two boys, and they do wonderfully with it. But that's Loki and Tarzan. So I think an individual owner needs to understand what his or her animal is going to tolerate and what's going to make them most happy. But I think a little bit of costume here and there has never really hurt anybody.
Matt Bershadker, President and CEO of the ASPCA. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And of course, our thanks to Slevin and Remy for making their appearances on Yahoo Finance. And Melody Hom, thank you. It's a little bit bittersweet right now because this is your last hit at Yahoo Finance. So we certainly will miss you so much here. We're so excited for you for your next opportunity, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Bye, Mel.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, everyone. Bye.